Chapter 7, Beginnings. As dinner time approached, the sky had already darkened. On the big bamboo peak, the rear mountain was covered in vast bamboo forests, while the buildings and houses of the disciples were located on the front peak. The largest and most important among them was the main hall, where Master Tia Bai and his family resided. Next to the main hall was a courtyard where the disciples lived. Despite the small number of people, there were more houses than residents, with each person having their own room, including the newly arrived Zhang Xiaofan. In terms of living conditions alone, the big bamboo peak was better off than the other peaks within the sect. The rest of the facilities consisted of the Taiji cave for cultivation and the kitchen and dining hall. At this moment, all the disciples had gathered in the dining hall. Lao Liu, Du Bishu, served the dishes one by one, mostly vegetarian with few meat dishes. The disciples sat down in order along the right side of the long table in the hall, with Song Darren seated at the head and Zhang Xiaofan respectfully sitting at the end. At the head and opposite end of the table were placed a large chair and two smaller ones, obviously reserved for Master Tia Bai's family. Glancing at the empty seat beside him, which belonged to the busy Du Bishu, Zhang Xiaofan waited for a while until Du Bishu finished serving the dishes, washed his hands, and returned to his seat, joining the others in waiting for the arrival of their master. Du Bishu, who looked quite young, had a thin and sharp face with large triangular eyes that seemed agile and lively. After sitting down, he looked at Zhang Xiaofan and smiled. "What's your name?" "Little Junior," Zhang Xiaofan honestly replied. "Zhang Xiaofan." Du Bishu nodded and pointed to himself. "I'm your sixth senior brother." Du Bishu. Zhang Xiaofan respectfully addressed him. "Sixth senior brother." Du Bishu cleared his throat and patted Zhang Xiaofan's shoulder, smiling. "Later, you can taste your senior brother's cooking." Zhang Xiaofan couldn't help but swallow his saliva when he smelled the delicious aroma of the dishes on the table. Nodding vigorously, Du Bishu suddenly chuckled, with a hint of mischief in his eyes. He pointed to the entrance of the hall and said, "Little Junior, how about we make a bet on who will enter through that door first? Our master's wife, or Little Junior's sister?" Zhang Xiaofan was taken aback, and the others at the table turned their heads, all with smiles on their faces. Lu Daxin, sitting next to Du Bishu, laughed. "Sixth brother, your gambling addiction is acting up again." Beside him, a lean and agile-looking figure named Hidazi also chuckled. "He hasn't won in a long time. Now, he wants to trick a kid." Du Bishu waved his hand repeatedly, ignoring the others, his face full of smiles as he looked at Zhang Xiaofan. "Little Junior, guess who will enter through the door first?" "Don't worry, your senior brother won't bully you." Wu Dai, sitting further away, shouted loudly, "Little Junior, since it's a bet, ask him what happens if you lose and what happens if you win." Du Bishu snorted and said, "Are you afraid I'll cheat? Du Bishu, rely on my good name and reputation as a gambler." "Little Junior, if you guess right, I'll help you chop bamboo for 10 days. If you lose, you'll help me wash dishes for 10 days. How about it?" Everyone burst into laughter again, and Song Darren scolded with a smile, lacking in integrity. Zhang Xiaofan felt warmly embraced by the friendly atmosphere of his senior brothers and nodded, saying, "Okay." Du Bishu slapped his thigh, suddenly full of vigor and vitality, and said, "Little Junior, who do you think will be the first to enter? Master's wife, or Little Junior's sister?" All eyes were on Zhang Xiaofan, who thought to himself that the Qingyun Sect valued respecting their masters, so Master Tia Bai would probably be the first to enter. He immediately spoke up, "I guess it will definitely be Master who comes in first." Everyone burst into laughter, and Lu Daxin shook his head. "I didn't expect to be tricked by sixth brother today." Du Bishu couldn't contain his joy and looked at Zhang Xiaofan with a grin. "Little Junior, let me tell you, every time among Master's family, it's always Little Junior's sister who rushes in first. Haha, you'll come help me wash dishes later." Zhang Xiaofan scratched his head, unable to help but smile. He nodded, "Yes, sixth senior brother." Zhang Dali, the third in line, who was short and stout, smiled and said, "Sixth brother, do you have any shame?" Du Bishu gave him a disdainful look and said, "Third brother, what are you talking about? No one is forcing anyone here. We're all willing to gamble, right, little junior?" Zhang Xiaofan nodded, and suddenly Song Darren said, "Master is here." Everyone straightened up, standing up and facing the door to greet their master. After a while, the short and plump figure of Master Tia Bai appeared at the door, but behind him there was no one else. He had come alone. Everyone was stunned, and Du Bishu couldn't help but ask, "Master, where is Master's wife and little junior sister?" Tia Bai glanced at him and said faintly, "Your master's wife took your little junior sister to her parents' house." Everyone was astonished, but after a moment, someone couldn't help but laugh. As they watched Tia Bai swaying into the hall, Zhang Xiaofan felt embarrassed, wanting to laugh, but not daring to. Du Bishu, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. Tia Bai sat down in his own large chair and waved his hand, saying, "Let's eat." The disciples then sat down, each looking at Du Bishu with a smile, while Tia Bai glanced at Zhang Xiaofan and asked Song Darren, "Have you told him about the rules and regulations?" Song Darren nodded, "Yes, I've told him about the 12 rules and 20 commandments. As for the basic cultivation techniques, seeing that the junior brother was a bit tired from his arrival today, I plan to teach him tomorrow." Tia Bai nodded in agreement and said to Zhang Xiaofan, "Little seventh." Zhang Xiaofan hadn't realized that he was being called by his master. Only when Du Bishu pushed him did he wake up and quickly stood up, saying, "Disciple is here." Tia Bai shook his head, feeling slightly less confident in this slowly acting disciple. He said, "You will follow your eldest senior brother for now. Remember to study diligently. The path of Tao is boundless. Even if your aptitude is a bit lacking, as long as you persevere diligently, you may still achieve success. Do you understand?" Zhang Xiaofan responded respectfully as if receiving a decree. "Yes." Tia Bai waved his hand. "Eat." Zhang Xiaofan, being young and short, couldn't reach some of the dishes on the table with his large bowl, but Du Bishu, sitting beside him, was kind enough to help him several times, whispering, "Little junior, eat more." It seemed that he didn't care at all about losing the bet. The wager was indeed worthwhile. Feeling grateful, Zhang Xiaofan nodded repeatedly and ate for a while before asking quietly, "Sixth senior brother." Du Bishu turned to him and asked, "What is it?" Zhang Xiaofan asked, "Does Master's wife still have parents?" In his young mind, people from the Qingyun Sect were all top-notch immortals, so how could they have worldly concerns? Du Bishu spat. "Of course she does. Master's wife is also human." But when Master said his wife went back to her parents' house, he didn't mean her actual parents' house. He meant she went back to visit her senior uncle at our own bamboo peak. Zhang Xiaofan was surprised. "Really?